Sara Moreira. I'm an assistant professor at Kellogg, Northwestern University. And let me tell a little bit about my, how I came to be an assistant professor here. So I did my college at University of Porto. I did a college actually with still a 5 years college program. And after finishing, I worked for another 5 years at Bank of Portugal in the research department. It was quite an amazing experience. During that period, I also did a master at PEJ and applied for PhD programs in the United States. So I applied to several programs and ultimately came to do my PhD at University of Chicago. During that period, I changed a little bit more my interest. So early on in Portugal, I was working health economics and economics of education. And around the second year of my PhD program, I started shifting my interest to basically understand the performance of firms. So I started by thinking initially on the supply side of labor, then eventually came to being more interested on the demand side. And since then, been working on topics related to the determinants of performance and the impact of that performance in economic aggregates. So I broadly work on the intersection of industrial organization and macroeconomics. Early on in my life, I decided that I wanted to do economics for college. So there was really no question around that. I didn't have a taste for natural sciences, and I thought economics was a good fit for me. During the college, at some point, I thought immediately entering a PhD program, but ultimately, I decided to try to enter a research group and see how research, what will I be good at it and will I like it? And that's where working at Bank of Portugal was quite important because, I learned the importance of research. I learned the importance of our work in potentially affecting policy. And during that period, I started, creating a portfolio of materials to eventually apply for PhD programs. And, I thought like the best was really to try to apply for a PhD program in economics in the United States. And I was fortunate that I was able to enter one great program where, I really could get I believe, a good toolkit of, all the things that now make my, my research potentially more successful. When I started working in the research part of Bank of Portugal, immediately you had to start, producing some output of your research. And I actually, I learned a lot from my colleagues there, like how to go from, producing things on, Stata or MATLAB and actually put together a report. So my very first research project was in health economics, and it was to understand the impact of public-private partnerships in hospitals in many health outcomes. And so that was actually my first year big project at Bank of Portugal, and then ultimately got just publishing the internal publication and these publications that are published on a regular basis. Then throughout this period, I worked in several other projects, involving health education, economics education. And one key thing there is that you really have to produce. It's not just, you put together a bunch of regression results, a bunch of analysis, a program that runs, but at the end, writing was a very important phase. And that's something that I learned early on, is the importance of writing and writing well. I had a great mentor, George Correia da Cunha, there, that you like really teaches how to put together a report, an introduction and so on, that will explain well what we did and the implications of what we were doing. So I have a lot to thank for that. I think that's a skill that it's harder to acquire during a PhD, and I got to do that there. And then as my master's, I continued to be interested in health economics, and I worked on a project that ultimately with Peter Barros that ultimately actually got published. So we submitted to health economics, and it was received well. And throughout that process, I learned how to revise it, how to work it to be published. It was great to have that experience just before the PhD. It also made me think really that our research and producing, it gives a lot of satisfaction, and it was giving me a lot of satisfaction to basically ultimately deliver our work into a publication. I think that is going from a consumer of research into a producer of research is extremely hard, and that's a skill that in the PhD programs throughout the world, that it's very hard. It's, in the first, second year of a PhD program, you basically learn many papers, many techniques, but ultimately you are a consumer. You may do replication, but you don't really produce. And then eventually, as you start phasing into production, that's where I think I had a comparative advantage, was because I had that experience already in my prior work. And so I think that helped to quickly shift from a consumer of research into a producer of research.